Welcome to City Council Discussion Only meeting, Tuesday, May 17th, 2022. We'll begin with the roll call.
Councilmember Babcock.
Present.
Councilmember Brookover.
Here.
Councilmember Watson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gregg.
Here.
Mayor Bacon.
Present. Next, I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll have communication from the audience. If it's related to the Andrew Wells resolution, we'll give you time during that time to make public comment. If it's any other public comment related to anything else on the agenda or outside of the agenda, please approach the podium now.
Hi, Alice Drager, 621 Sunset Lane. First, I will just commend Andy Wells for his service to the community. One of the most significant conversations I ever had was 2 hours alone with Andy, which I won't go into, but it changed my life in many ways. The HRC of East Lansing is about to revisit the issue of racism as a public health crisis. And it strikes me that we're facing a moment in history when apparently it's the first time a human being has been shot by our officers, and that human being is a black man named DeAnthony Van Adden. So we have a racial disparity with regard to who has been shot by our police department. I want to give a little personal history disclosure before I get into the policy issue I want to discuss with you today. And that is that one of my brothers is multiracial. And because he has dreadlocks and he has some features of blackness, he's culturally identified by white people as black. He's identified by cops as black. I've been in the car with him when he's been stopped for driving while black. My white brother has been the same, and we've both felt for a long time white people should have to drive around with black people and see the way cops look at the car. He's been called the N-word. When he was in high school, he was the only black kid in school. And my mother was called by the vice principal and told that my brother had been caught with a potentially riotous and extremely dangerous weapon. Potentially riotous and extremely dangerous weapon turned out to be a water balloon. My brother, who is white, and I were never stopped for having water balloons. Every officer I talk with off the record about the shooting of DeAnthony Van Adden says there's no way to explain the actions that occurred in that parking lot. Mr. Van Adden went into the store, he brought groceries, he paid for them. Yes, he was holding a gun, he probably was on parole violation, but he was chased and he was shot in a very crowded parking lot. Something like 11 shots were fired by 2 officers. Shots were fired, admire was the word, but the shots were fired by our officers. In response to concerns about systemic racism and over-policing, this council, in conjunction with our police department, has created policies meant to be equally applied to all of us. What has been shocking to me is several things. I went to the Oversight Commission meeting after the shooting. The chief of police admitted that he had not yet viewed the videos. If I were the chief of police and my officers shot somebody, I would not go to sleep until I had looked at the videos. So I cannot understand how our chief officer did not do that. Why was he avoiding for days looking at these videos? We've also heard that the chief of police has not yet instituted a review of the relevant policies to see whether or not there are policy violations by these officers. Why is that? Therefore, since there's been no review of the policy violation potential, there's been apparently no move to see whether or not retraining is necessary. I want to read to you from some selections of the policy that East Lansing Police has, response to resistance. Officers shall use only objectively reasonable amount of force to effectively bring an incident under control. Deadly force is defined as a use by officer that is likely to cause death or serious bodily injury. It may be used in the defense of self, others, or in pursuit of a violent feeling felon. I'm pretty sure that's supposed to say violent fleeing felon, but it's supposed to be used for the prevention of imminent death or imminent great bodily harm to himself or herself or to another individual. Under this policy, officers are supposed to immediately document what happened, and a supervisor is supposed to immediately get involved. We were told at the Oversight Commission that none of that happened. Why did none of that happen? It's supposed to be immediately documented and immediately basically sent to the chief of police for review. Why has none of that happened? Where is the documentation? Where is the policy review? Why are we being told that MSP has to go through the washing machine process before we're allowed to understand what happened here? The reason for you to act on this issue is not political pressure. It is not because I am standing here and telling you that there is a problem here with regard to our implementation of policy. There is a moral need for you to act. It is your own city's policies that are not being followed. I understand that you are not in charge of the chief of police, but the person you hire and fire, your city manager, is. There is a moral need here, not a political need. The Oversight Commission was not created to give you political coverage. It was created to assist the city in the carrying out of justice. You can act to require that the policies be followed, and the policies are not being followed.
15 seconds remaining.
Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment? All right. Seeing none, I'll move on to communication from council. Councilperson Brookover,
None, thank you.
Councilperson Babcock,
Thank you. One of the greater traditions of this city is the East Lansing Arts Festival, which is this weekend, and I would encourage everyone to go. It's been a highlight of this community for many, many years, and it never fails to you never fail to find something of interest, something new there. I also saw that the Arts Festival is still in need of volunteers, so if you'd like to participate that way, you get a free t-shirt, and it's also just a really fun event to volunteer at. And you can go to the website www.elartfest.com, and there's an opportunity to volunteer. Hope to see many people there. Thank you.
Councilperson Watson, Mayor Pro Tem Gregg,
Yes, Councilmember Babcock stole my thunder. Art's my thing, Lisa. I get to talk about it. But I did want to add one thing to your very generous description, which is that there's also a People's Choice Award. So if you are at the festival on late Saturday after the on-site jury has looked at the art offerings, or on Sunday, please cast your ballot for the People's Choice Award. That is a piece that enters the city's art collection and our permanent collection, which you can see them kind of displayed variously all over City Hall. So that's a fun way to participate. I also wanted to invite everyone to the ribbon cutting on Monday for our pavilion at Patriarch Park, which is the improvements are finished and we're ready to celebrate. And also just give a shout out to Adam Cummins and his downtown team for the work that they've put into getting the alfresco area put up. I've never seen a stroller parking section at Barrio before, but I did on Thursday night. So I think that is a mark of success, I would say, in making sure that our community gets to enjoy our downtown. And that's it from me today.
All right, I'll start with, first I want to extend from the city of East Lansing our deepest condolences to the people of Buffalo, New York. We stand in solidarity with the community there. We know it's difficult as the citizens navigate what is essentially a terror event, deeply impacting black and brown people in that community and the community at large. I know as a nation, it becomes very difficult to even digest the amount of trauma that's kind of coming through right now. You have to almost take your time to digest it all, but we can't afford to look away right now. We have to pay attention, let it and move it beyond the current news cycle. We can't let that feeling go away. We must act, we must continue to digest it. I want to read the names of the individuals so we don't ever get to the point where they're just nameless, faceless individuals who are being struck down in these acts of terrorism. Roberta Drury, Margus Morrison, Andre McNeil, Aaron Slater, Geraldine Talley, Celeste Cheney, Hayward Patterson, Catherine Massey, Pearl Young, Ruth Whitfield. The community will never be the same without these individuals. We send out I can't even send out thoughts and prayers anymore at this point. I'm too fatigued to do that, but I'll send out the call for resolve and continued change in these areas of social need for change. We're getting to a point where it's endemic, and that's terrifying in the modern era. Next up, on a lighter note and a little bit happier note. Yes, sir.
If we're not neglected to ask you to ask the people in the queue, the virtual queue, there's one caller.
Oh, sorry.
We'd like to just ask them if they had any public comment, and then we can move on.
Oh, yeah. Can it caller in the virtual queue?
Caller with the phone number ending in 552, you are now welcome to address the council. You may need to hit *6 on your device to unmute.
Hello. Pat Edsel, 1026 Daisy Lane. Earlier this evening, I submitted an email to the board as a member of the East Lansing Independent Police Oversight Commission. I apologize for the late arrival of that. My life is a little bit crazy, but I hope you can take the time to read through my notes. There's one correction in that I mentioned that we had not received the internal video from Meyer. It was not released to the ELI POC, but I've since been made aware that it is available. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but I will take a look at that certainly as soon as possible. I provided some information about some possible budget numbers for the ELI POC. I wanted to add one other piece, which is we had discussed, but we did not pass a motion regarding forensic analysis of the video footage. Once the investigation comes out, I have no idea what that would cost, but it was discussed quite a bit in our last meeting, and I think that number should be considered when looking at the budget for our commission. I want to thank the mayor for mentioning the shooting in Buffalo. It's heartbreaking, and I agree with you. Thoughts and prayers just aren't cutting it anymore. What really is disheartening is that a white supremacist can walk into a grocery store and shoot 10 people dead and be arrested without incident, while a young black man in our community walks in to buy groceries and ends up shot twice in a very open parking lot. We have a problem. I appreciate the comments made by Alice Drager. My written comments also included our concerns about policy being followed, both all of the things that Alice mentioned, but also in looking at these incidences as policy violations and addressing them internally, even though there is a criminal investigation going on externally. Lastly, I have some concerns, as we try to work as an oversight commission to change policing in East Lansing, about the pushback that we seem to have gotten from the police themselves. At first, before this incident happened, there was a whole bunch of, oh, yes, we want to work with you. And then all of a sudden there's this, we don't necessarily want to work with you. I am concerned that when I asked about use of force incidences and why weren't social workers sent out, and the use of force reports repeatedly saying unavailable in the middle of the day, unavailable, and only recently finding out we no longer have social workers. This was a huge addition to our police department as an attempt to decrease interaction between police and those individuals having mental health crises, having domestic issues, etc. And to find out that those individuals no longer work for the East Lansing Police Department, that we've simply gotten rid of this, has me concerned. Why is that? Why did they leave? Were they fully accepted by the police department, or were they treated poorly by the police department? I think that that's important. They should have been on the front lines of every call that involved potentially a domestic incident, a mental health incident, a drug abuse incident. That's what they're trained to do. Our police officers are not. So I would like the council to look into that, and I will bring it up at the Police Oversight Commission at our next meeting in June. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Return to my comments. First, I want to send out my appreciation to Hannah Community Center Customer Service Associate Mary K. Williams, retiring this week after 17 years of devoted service, greeting, helping members of the community. Having walked in here many times, I really appreciate all the staff and always have felt welcome in this building. We've done so much activity here. I just really appreciate her service to us here, being bright, welcoming, caring, and just really making the Hannah Center the special place that it is for the community. And big part of that, it's a big loss, but we hope that you enjoy your time in retirement. And we just appreciate all the service. So thank you so much. And then I just want to illustrate a little bit more on the Art Festival, obviously one of our signature events, taking place Saturday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., Sunday 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., showcasing 174 artists, featuring art demonstration area, larger-than-life floral installation. I don't know what that is. I'm excited for whatever that means. Food vendors, music, all the usual stuff, and I'll be out there so you can see me if that helps get any more people out and to buy some stuff. So we appreciate you. Please come out to the Art Festival this weekend and enjoy East Lansing this weekend. That's all for my comments. Communications from the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to mention again about the Albert al fresco, last week the street was closed for one block of Albert, and I've been down there a number of times. Staff have done a great job of getting things out into the street, activities. There were people of all ages playing yard games and beanbag toss and lots of different activities. So it was great to see downtown that vibrant. Thanks, staff, for moving that initiative forward, and also to all of our residents who are downtown enjoying it every night of the week. And also want to say congratulations to Mr. Wells. Nice to see you here. We've had an opportunity to work together a number of times, and congratulations on your retirement. I know that's the next item. That's all I have. Thank you.
And George, I didn't have the specifics. I got the email on the street closure. Can you illustrate that real quick?
Yep. So it's the one block in front of it's between, let me get this right, MAC and Abbott, and there is a pedestrian mall essentially where we have the dining outside pushed across the sidewalk to add more outdoor dining for the restaurants. There's lots of seating areas for people to have at their leisure, Adirondack chairs, hammocks. There's also long tables where picnic tables where people can gather if they take takeout food and be able to dine at the area for takeout. So lots of activities and yard games and those sorts of things for people to be able to do downtown throughout the day and into the evening. So that's sort of the whole area there, lots of activity.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Next up, item 6.1, special presentation, consideration of a resolution congratulating East Lansing High School Principal Andrew Wells on his retirement. I'll get started, and I'm going to have our DE&I director read some or portions of the resolution into the record, or if we see fit, and then after that we'll allow for public comment. The people who put the blue slip up here, but if the spirit strikes you, he's done enough for this community to where whoever wants to step up, feel free to step up. You won't be held off because it's too important of a day for that. It's an honor to present the following resolution in honor of Mr. Andrew Wells. He is known by many of us in the community for his outstanding dedication and service to the students and families and staff of East Lansing Public Schools. Andy has over 3 decades of impeccable service in our community. The occasion of his retirement could not go unmarked by the city of East Lansing. We all know Andy Wells very well as a coach, a mentor, an administrator, friend. Had to add extra stuff in here. In every other role he has had distinguished himself to have. He'll be greatly missed. I say gravely missed. I think you're irreplaceable. And I'm big on culture. I think you're one of those people who leaves and you need 2 or 3 people. I don't know if they got the budget for that, but I don't think you're one person can replace you at this point. I'm honored to have worked with you as one of the coaching staff up there, and I'll say from personal experience, some of the most brutally cold days where family didn't come and nobody came to our game to watch us play. I'm coming through the gate and I get a high five, and it's Andy Wells, and I'm like, all right, better go out here and try to win. He came out in this 20 degrees or whatever it is to watch us, and I mean, there's not a fan in sight. That's on the road, that's wherever, and that's an incredible part of it. And I know from my experience with my own kids, and particularly my daughter, just him greeting students individually and high fives and all kinds of stuff. And I know he's just so humble to even receive this. I know we're embarrassing him right now. He's just a humble but excellent man in this community, and I find you irreplaceable. So on behalf of East Lansing City Council, we'll present you a resolution honoring your service, congratulating you on your retirement, and declaring May 20th, 2022 as Andrew Wells Day in the city of East Lansing.
That's right.
Replaceable.
Mayor and council, if you would just allow me a point of privilege to just say to Andy Wells, I know him as a friend, but he also is responsible for my son being the man that he is today. My son met Mr. Wells when he was in middle school, and all throughout high school, Mr. Wells was a mentor and a friend to him. My son was an athlete, and he and Coach Bibbs were at every one of his games, encouraging him, getting on him when he needed to have somebody else encourage him besides his mom. And I just wanted to say to you that this community is indelibly marked by your elegance, sir, and your grace, and I am going to miss you. And so I am going to, as much as I can get through of this resolution, to read the council's resolution honoring Mr. Andrew Wells for his distinguished service in the city of East Lansing on the occasion of his retirement. Whereas Andrew Wells was born in Detroit, Michigan, and lived with his 4 siblings and his mother, Martha Bibbs. And whereas Martha Bibbs became the first woman and the first Black person to be appointed State Personnel Director for the State of Michigan Civil Service Commission. And whereas in 1968, Martha married James Bibbs, Michigan State University's first African-American head coach, and the family moved to East Lansing, Michigan in the Flower Pot neighborhood and have been there for over 4 decades. And whereas Andrew attended Hannah Middle School and participated in extracurricular activities, including intramural sports and band, and was recognized by his peers and the staff as a rising leader and role model. And whereas Andy, as he came to be known by teachers and classmates, continued to develop his leadership skills at East Lansing High School, where he was an outstanding student, athlete, and received numerous recognitions, including 3 varsity letters in basketball and 4 in track and field, MVP for 2 years in a row in both basketball and track and field, all state honors, and was selected to the all-conference teams as a varsity athlete, East Lansing High School freshman record in the high jump in 1972, and held school records in both the high and low hurdles for at least 10 years. Lansing State Journal Honor Roll champion in the high hurdles, low hurdles, and high jump. Conference champion in the high jump, low, and high hurdles. Captain of the basketball and track team for 2 years. And whereas, as a member of the all-area Dream Team in basketball in his junior and senior years, he played with other notables, including Irvin Magic Johnson and Jay Vincent. Andy was also selected to play in the State of Michigan Round Ball Classic his senior year. And whereas Andy did not limit his talent to sports, as he participated in school musicals, and according to former theater director Kate Bell, was the first African-American student to participate in theater. And whereas Andrew Wells graduated from East Lansing High School in 1976 and attended Eastern Michigan University and Michigan State University for basketball and track and field with athletic scholarships, earning varsity letters at both institutions. And whereas Andy earned all Big Ten honors in the hurdles and the high jump and served as co-captain of the MSU track and field team during his senior year. And whereas in 1981, Andy graduated from Michigan State University and currently holds a BS, MA, and Education Specialist degree. And whereas Andrew began his career in East Lansing as a luncheon supervisor and was soon promoted and assigned the role of district community liaison supporting at-risk high school students. And whereas in 1994, he began serving as athletic director and associate principal at East Lansing High School. And whereas on July 15, 1995, Andrew married his best friend and the love of his life, Daphne Bellows, a fellow Spartan, and they have 3 children, Andrew, Brianna, and Kaylee. Whereas Andrew went on to hold several positions within the district, including East Lansing High School coach, athletic director, high school associate principal, principal of White Hills Elementary School, and Glencairn Elementary School. And I might add, he did them both concurrently. Whereas in 2017, Andrew returned to the halls of East Lansing High School as its lead administrator and principal. And whereas Mr. Wells touched the lives of thousands of students over the years, and his genuine compassion and care has made an indelible impact on the entire East Lansing Public School District. And I quote from students, "Even though Mr. Wells was not at the high school when I was there, he was always nice and caring and looked out for my best interest. He was always positive and concerned with my success and well-being and was at most of my track meets, even though he didn't have to be." Taylor Manson, 2020 Olympic bronze medalist, East Lansing High School class of 2017. I have known Mr. Wells since 5th grade when he was my elementary principal, and he has stuck with me every step of the way. He reaches down to all of us and connects to students on a personal level and makes us feel safe and cared for. Every single sporting event, he is there cheering from the sidelines, letting us know that we are part of something bigger. He created a family of our school. He will be missed. He is irreplaceable. Thank you for everything you have done for me. The fist bump every morning, it has meant the world to me. Ethan DeWitt, class of 2022. I have known Mr. Wells since elementary school. He is an amazing principal. As a junior, I am so sad he will not be here for my last year at East Lansing, because when I think of EL, I see Mr. Wells. He's here for everything, even during lunch. He talks to every student. He goes out of his way to speak to everyone so that we all feel seen and heard. His speeches are amazing. I wish the upcoming class could have known him. Summer Ajari, East Lansing High School, class of 2023. He has made me and his mother very, very proud. He is a good, caring, and obedient son, a wonderful father and husband. Without being prejudiced, he is a tremendous young man. I am happy to have lived long enough to see his retirement, but the best for Andy is yet to come. Coach James Bibbs, Andrew's father. Whereas his career and service to the community spans over 3 decades and is marked by exceptional professionalism, hard work, significant contributions, and recognitions. And whereas Andrew Wells is a man of solid principles and faith, and he is an active member of Abundant Faith Grace Church. And whereas the East Lansing community has been irrevocably touched by the grace, dignity, humanity, elegance, compassion, and service of Andrew Wells. And whereas there cannot be too much said in recognition of a man who embodies the spirit of East Lansing like Mr. Wells. And whereas the East Lansing City Council recognizes the outstanding professionalism, talent, and service of Mr. Wells. Now therefore be it resolved that the East Lansing City Council recognizes Andrew Wells' 3 decades of committed service and congratulates him on his retirement from the East Lansing Public School District. Be it further resolved that May 20th, 2022 is declared Andrew Wells Day in the city of East Lansing. Mayor Bacon and Council, this is council is, the resolution is proffered for your consideration for approval, and there are individuals who are here with Mr. Wells who would like to make comment at this time, if it is the pleasure of the council.
Yes.
Probably make a motion at this point to approve.
Passage of the resolution.
All right, I'll look for a second. Moved and seconded. I don't assume any discussion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Better not be. Motion carries. And I'm going to allow some points of privilege for council, and then I'll take public comment. And I know it's going long, but that's what it's going to be. The incredible part of this is I had to process it as I was sitting here. I wouldn't be sitting in this seat if not for Andy Wells, because I wouldn't be in East Lansing. Because I was looking for a school for my daughter, and we were looking at all the schools and even considering East Lansing, and walked into White Hills Elementary School, and he said, this is where you're going. You don't need to see any more schools. This is it. And the sales pitch, and he started walking us around. It just struck me. That's why I'm in East Lansing. That's why I'm here today, because Andy Wells was at White Hills Elementary, and that's got to be part of the reason I'm sitting in the seat today. And it's a part of the reason it will forever be East Lansing family. And on top of that, for anyone who doesn't know, as we were working through the Robert Greene project, and I would talk to Mr. Wells, and he could tell the stories from a child's perspective. It's a really incredible civil rights legacy with this family. So if you ever want to talk about stuff and hear it from, 9, 10-year-old, and I was there. I was blown away by the history. And he's just so humble. You wouldn't even know there's another civil rights icon and who was a child during the movement right in our midst. So just incredible history. I'll allow a point of privilege for anybody on council who has comment.
My only concern is that without taking any of the polish off what I know is going to come afterwards from all your family and stuff, now I'm concerned that Ms. Hardy's going to have to prepare a resolution not only for Andy's wife, but also for Coach Bibbs, because it's kind of astonishing when you hear all that. So.
I had not had the honor of meeting Mr. Wells until about 15 minutes ago, and the most striking thing is I mentioned three people who graduated from high school in 1984 and 1983, and he knew them all instantly by name. And they were not, shall we say, star athletes, most of them. I can tell you that the fact that I knew things that Mr. Wells told them, was told to me in my 30s, tells you what a lifetime impression he has made, as we've heard tonight from so many. So I'm going to dip into my high school experience. There was a very, very important teacher in my life, and I told him, I don't need to know that. Somewhere out there, Mr. Wells is someone who told you they didn't need to know something, and let me say that I can tell you every one of them regrets that and is grateful for having you in their life. Thank you.
President Watson?
Congratulations and thank you for your years of service. As a mother of 3 children, my oldest is a sophomore, her name is Ty. She said she hoped that you would retire when she graduated, and that's amazing. Sometimes people typically dodge their principles, and so you gave me comfort on different levels, and you gave the kids comfort for decades, and thank you again for your service. We appreciate you so much.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Mr. Wells, I had the honor of interviewing your nominators for the Crystal Award last year. So, and then you skipped the ceremony, so I didn't get to shake your hand. But I will tonight, and I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that you're getting further recognition for your incredible service to the community. Also, a little bit bummed that you're stepping out after only one of my children has gone through your school. I'm not taking that personally, but. I hope that your retirement contains all of the good things that you deserve.
Thank you. All right, I'll go to comments from the audience. Mike Behan.
Mayor and members of the council. Thank you, Elaine, for asking me to say a few words. I grew up at East Lansing. I know Councilmember Brookover probably shares some of the same experiences where you have certain people that you look up to as a young person. And Andy, I think, along with Irvin, were my two heroes watching play. And I've talked to people through the years when they meet their heroes and they don't meet their expectations. Andy Wells far exceeded my expectations. He became my coach in 1981. And what struck me even back then was the impact that he had. I think it's Kipling that talks about being able to walk with kings but not lose the common touch. And as one of the awkward kids, I felt drawn to Andy because he made you feel confidence and made you feel good about yourself. And he's done that over the past 40 years with so many people that you've heard from, and I suspect so many more people that the impact that he has had on their life is something that perhaps only they know. He is our magic man. He always has been. He as Elaine mentioned, he's a Hall of Fame athlete, Hall of Fame student, Hall of Fame teacher, Hall of Fame family man, just a Hall of Fame person. And I was here really hoping to support the motion to not accept his retirement because it's really such a loss. But I'm excited for the next phases in his life, and I think that, as Coach Bibbs pointed out, the best is still to come from Andy Wells. Andy, I love you, and thanks for everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Isabel?
Hi, my name is Izzy Malenfant. I'm a senior at East Lansing High School, and I've been there all of my high school education. Through it all, Mr. Wells has always been there to offer a smile and a fist bump. He makes me laugh, and we all know how much he cares about us. One of my favorite things about him is that he cares so much. He has been known to shed a tear or two when he's addressing his students, and the amount of love he brings to our school atmosphere is beyond explanation. ELHS would not be the family we are without our fearless leader, Mr. Wells. I, for one, am proud and overjoyed to be a small part of his final graduating class. I could never be the person I am today without you. Thank you so much for all you do. I will never forget you.
Thank you. I have a group of 4 students. I don't want to mess your names up, so I think that's you back there. Come on up. I see 4 names.
Hello, everyone. My name is Azza El-Rashid, and I'm a senior at East Lansing.
And my name is Dairon Chaplis Vargas, and I am a junior at East Lansing. Mr. Wells has been more than a family member to East Lansing High School. He has been a role model in shaping my life. Mr. Wells inspires not just me, but the community. I have made many memories with Mr. Wells, even though coronavirus cut my 9th grade year short and my 10th grade year online. I still have many fond memories. I am not going to forget his back-to-back 3-pointers at the staff versus students game where everybody went wild, and seeing him in the hallways and having daily conversations about our day or what's going on with the community. I love how he says hello to everybody in the morning and always gives everybody a fist bump. He has made a great relationship with every student at East Lansing High School. You are a principal whose legacy will be remembered fondly.
Mr. Wells, your presence has meant more to us than you will ever know. You have been a friend to many and a familiar face to all. You have impacted each of us so much, and speaking on behalf of the seniors, you will always be part of the East Lansing that we will remember fondly. Seeing you as a person of color in a position of power has inspired me to seek similar positions and to feel empowered in doing so. Thank you for your many fist bumps, for your many kind words, and for your consistent support. Thank you, Mr. Wells.
All right. I think in closing, I'm going to hand this to him. Can we take some pictures?
Mayor, if you would permit, would it be appropriate to see if Mr. Wells would like to make some comments, or his wife, or his family, or?
Absolutely.
Yes, please.
I'll be quick. I promise you, I'll get you out of here by 8:30 tomorrow
No
morning.
need. We say in church, take your time.
Okay, so listen, this is interesting. Okay, first of all, I want to thank God for giving me the opportunity to serve. To serve in this capacity. I started my career in this room. I was a student, first of all, I was a student at Hannah Middle School. We moved here from the inner city of Detroit, and I was a sixth grader. And I'll never forget one of my teachers, Mr. Fred Waters, and this is Miss Teresa Waters. He called me into his office, and he said, "Andy," he said, "you have leadership skills." And he said, "I want you to start thinking of yourself as a leader." And I'll never forget that. And I really hold on to that to this day, because if it wasn't for Fred Waters, I don't think I would be standing here today. So, and you were a part of that. You were a part of it. So I want to thank you. Thank you so much for everything that you've done for me. And Lindley was actually a student back in the day. Lindley Sorg back then, Lindley Waters now. And I remember you so dearly. And you were a great basketball player too, all right? I was your coach. So, you know, this is really something very special. Now, when I say I started my career, I was actually a lunchroom monitor in this room. I remember walking around talking to all the kids and wiping down tables and doing this and that, and I just fell in love with being a part of something very special, because East Lansing Public Schools is very, very special. I just love it here. And, you know, my kids went through East Lansing schools. My son, Andrew, who's also a student at Eastern Michigan University playing basketball there. My daughter, Brianna, who's living out in California. My daughter, Kaylee, who's living in Columbus, Ohio. They're very special to me. And thank you, kids, for all that you've done. And then obviously my wife, who you know, is my best friend and the love of my life, and she actually keeps me real humble. You know, she lets me know that, you know, the dishes need to be done. I'll leave paper towel all over the place, tell me what I need to do and all that. But, you know, that's a part of it too. So thank you, Daphne, for everything that you've done. And I want to introduce you guys to my brother. This is my brother, Tony. And he was a student here at Hannah Middle School too. And, you know, thank you, Tony, for all that you do, for the family, all that you've done to help me in my journey. I really appreciate and love you and admire you. And my sister, Diana, back there, she's the attorney in the family. She likes to keep everybody straight and make sure we're all on the right page. So Diana, she also, I think you attended Hannah Middle School too. So, you know, we're back at home, if you will. And then Stephanie, Tony's wife, and Michelle, cousin, and Gerald, who thought he was a better basketball player than me back in the day, but that's okay. But this is the other thing. And I'm going to sit down in a second, but I just need to recognize my students. I just love my students. They mean the world to me. And when I decided to retire, it was such an emotional decision, because this is my East Lansing family. You know, when we talk about the social ills in the world, these students are the ones that will make a difference. But they need us. They need the guidance and the love and the support from us to feel empowered to make a difference. And so, students, I commend you for all that you do and all that you will do to have your mark or set your mark in on society. Thank you. I love you all so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And thank you too, Elaine. Thank you, okay? Thank you. I'm sorry. I gotta say my dad here, my dad is the love of my life too. And I'm telling you, he's my rock. So I really appreciate you, Dad. All right. I know.
The lighting might be better right back behind. Behind the table, okay.
No, that's great. They can do it. I'm like the worst photographer. I took about 30 pictures.
And that was like a showstopper. Whew. Okay. Next up,
If they don't want to stick around for the discussion on policies, do you want to take a 3-minute break to let people, so we can congratulate people?
Let's do that. Let's actually take 5 minutes if people want to stand up, take pictures, whatever you want to do, and then we'll resume after that.
Where are you going?
Yeah.
No. You're in for the
call the meeting back to order with item 7.1, discussion of new and updated financial policies.
Good evening. I brought Justin Geiger up here with me. So Justin is our budget and accounting analyst. He's kind of always stays behind the scenes, but I'm going to make him come up here tonight. He also plays a very important role in the budget, but he did most of the research on these policies. So when it comes to your questions, he might be the better one to answer them. So I guess a parting gift from me is to update some financial policies. There's a couple that we need to update because of ARPA, because of the federal grant rules. Some of these things have been changing over time. So tonight we have the capital asset management policy. This is a policy that we've had in place, but we've always had it as an administrative policy that the finance director signed. I felt it was probably more appropriate for city council to approve it. It really is setting capitalization thresholds, how to use our assets or how to depreciate them and dispose of them, and the valuation techniques. Again, all of these policies are under best practices, under GFOA. GFOA is Government Finance Officers Association. It's also in accordance with GAAP. Federal grant policy has to do with all of our federal dollars. The big impetus here was to acknowledge that we do now receive money in advance, meaning ARPA. So ARPA money we got in advance, we're holding on to that cash. So we needed to address that because our policy said we don't receive money in advance because most of our grants are reimbursement based. The other thing that we did in the federal grant policy is just address all the pieces of federal grants rather than just the required pieces of the policy. So there was a policy from 2016 that this will be replacing, and I gave you the red line of what's different. Not going to really go through all that because there's a lot. The fund balance policy is probably the one worth more conversation. We did add a bunch of stuff, a bunch of language, best practice language, but I'm also recommending that we increase our percentage from 8 to 15 up to 10 to 20. The big reason for that is, one, we are trending above the 15, which is great and probably where we need to be. The best practice is 16%. So if we increase ours to 10 to 20, that best practice is kind of at least in that range. I also put a few exceptions in there. We've had some conversations in past budget years about the Parks and Recreation Fund specifically, is that they are generally below that 8 to 15%. But there's really no need for them to be there because they're primarily funded by the general fund. So there's not necessarily a reason to have a large fund balance in the Parks and Recreation Fund or the Seniors Fund. I also put a section in there about the income tax fund. So with the restriction, with the reduced property tax millage, I think I've said this before, but my recommendation is to always hold 1/2 of the amount. So in that final year of the income tax, we're only going to have a half of a year of income tax, but we're going to have a full year reduction of property taxes. So we need to be able to make up for that. So I'm recommending that you leave 40 to 50% in the income tax fund. The purchasing card policy, this is what kind of, that's the peak. The purchasing card policy is a new policy. So I think you may remember we adopted a P card program with Fifth Third last summer, which Justin is also the lucky one to implement. And this is really just putting the policy in place so that we can start issuing the cards and allowing all of our employees to use that. We've gone through a lot of processes and we are paying vendors with what we call an electronic payment, which helps us earn the rebate. So we are earning a rebate as we speak. But this will allow the actual physical card to be distributed out to our employees, and they can start using that rather than checking out like a main city credit card. So it should help streamline a bunch of things for them. And then finally, just an update to the purchasing policy. Here, we're updating the federal thresholds that are set by the compliance supplement. And then we are also increasing the non-federal thresholds, and we're happy to talk through some of that. We also added a sole source procurement section. So happy to answer any questions, or if you want me to touch, or Justin to touch on certain subjects, we're happy to do so.
Yeah, I'll start. Kind of either or on the fund balance, kind of the 18 or the 8 to 15%, and then the adjustment. What would that have looked like worst year, 08, 09? What am I leaving a hand grenade for another council when they?
It's an interesting question, because at one point we actually lowered it from 10 to 15, I believe, to 8 to 15, because the city was struggling to meet that threshold in the years you're talking, 6, 7, 8 in that area. So I think it was actually 7, 8, or 9.
I believe we lowered it in 2006.
Yeah, so that's when the city basically had to reset the goalpost, because we were struggling to keep it at that level. So I think that it was arbitrarily low, and since we've been able to get it to a more satisfactory level, we've always tried to float at the 15 to 20% anyway, and that 8% is long gone for us. So I think that this is just a recognition of where we really should be, is the 10 to 20%.
So, this is all hindsight now. So if we're in the window that a lot of economists think we're in right now in the next, say, 10 to 12 months, what we're staring down, would 10 be the floor, that kind of thing? I'm just trying to think in the future that I'm not leaving something for some other council to get smashed under.
I mean, in terms of careful management, we want to have, we want to obviously be towards the top of that policy, and we've always wanted to be above 15%, towards the 20% range, and I think that there's no, going into any uncertainty, you probably want to be a little bit stronger financially. So I think that we just have to keep in mind that if we see that fund balance actually decreasing, because we are proposing a budget that shows some use of fund balance, if over the next year we see that fund balance actually decreases, I think we've got to tighten our belts and work hard to make sure that we can build that back up. Our goal in proposing a budget with a $470,000 use of fund balance is that throughout the year we're going to use careful management to claw that back and not actually have our fund balance reduce, or to the smallest amount possible. So those dollars are pretty dear to us, and we want to make sure we have a sufficient reserve.
Yeah, maybe just somewhere, if I can see the worst years and kind of see how that balanced out, that'd be of interest to me long term.
Yeah, and I mean, some of this is like, how do you look at fund balance? So in history, I guess when we talked about 8 to 15%, we were talking about this unassigned amount of fund balance. And it gets a little confusing. There's 5 categories of fund balance. There's unassigned, which means it's just available. There's assigned, which is council and the city manager's authority to assign things. So when we say we want to use it for a future budget, that's an assignment or a commitment. So there's also a commitment. So purchase orders, contracts, those are either assignments or commitments. Then there's restricted, which means there's an outside legal authority over that money. So for example, the Chesterfield conversion program, that $300,000, that's considered restricted money because it has to be used for a specific purpose. And then there's non-spendable, which the West Road property is in asset available for sale. That's considered non-spendable. Prepaids, inventory are considered non-spendable. So in the history, that 8 to 15% was really a criteria when we looked at just the unassigned piece. This 10 to 20 policy is looking at assigned, unassigned, assigned, and committed. So it kind of broadens that picture. And right now we are close to, I want to say 18, 19% if you combine those amounts in the general fund. So, I mean, looking back, I don't know if you're going to compare apples to apples if I say, if I'm looking at just the unassigned in the general fund. But I'm still happy to put that together.
Yeah. Just looking at proportions, just trying to get a feel for.
Yep,
I know it was
we
bad.
definitely have a big history of all those numbers. I can definitely put that together in a easily readable format.
Thank you.
You may have already said, has the city attorney already reviewed these?
No.
Okay, so I'm referring to page 37 and 38 of our materials. So the sole source procurement, well, here's my understanding. My understanding is state law requires us to do competitive bidding. And so what I'm curious about here on your sole source procurement, I guess I just need to know before we vote on these whether that's in compliance with state law. And then the second part of that is, I mean, it's also my understanding, having been involved in these situations as an attorney for governmental entities, the reality is state law allows the municipality to accept any bid for any reason. I mean, it doesn't have to be the lowest bid. You really can accept any bid. And so I guess what I'm trying to figure out is bid. You really can accept any bid. And so I guess what I'm trying to figure out from a theoretical standpoint, why do we even need this? Because the reality is you can put everything out for a bid over a certain amount, and if you only have one person respond, like I think we heard tonight, then under state law, it's fine to give them the bid, right?
I think that those things come into play for something like the water treatment facility, where it's a renovation or reconstruction of pumps, which are extremely technical, and there's one firm that actually does that type of work. So rather than having a bidding process which would slow down the renovation of a pump or repair of something, it's a big ticket item that would easily go over $20,000. But that was one of the areas that this comes up a lot is with the water treatment facility, because again, there's very few people that do that type of work, but the urgency of it to get it done and to work with a firm that knows how to renovate the pumps is something that's come up a number of times. So that's one area where I can think that it's come up frequently in actually in application. I can't think of other places where sole source has actually been an issue predictably for us besides the water treatment plant.
Yeah, well, just in anticipation of the city attorney, I understand what each of you is saying, but that makes me very nervous, because the reality is, how do we know? And then you get a staff or bureaucracy that's used to dealing with a certain operation, and so they don't really actually know who else might be out there or not, and so it's a safeguard to just go ahead and do the competitive bidding. In the end, there may be only the one outfit, and I realize it may slow it down, but we can speed up the competitive bid process too. So I'm just saying that's my reservation, subject to what the city attorney says. So.
We'll check into it.
Page 36 of 37 on contracts. From what I read, we'd no longer see on our consent agenda or even another agenda amounts that were under 20,000. Or, yeah.
That's how it is currently.
Currently, that's the current authorization, is
So the
$20,000 comes to council.
only thing that comes to council is any contract over $20,000, equal to or greater than $20,000.
So we'll still see it on the consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. My other question was, back at the top, the part that talks about the income tax fund. What if the income taxes are reinstated? What happens to this? Would this statement still be in place?
I think you could reevaluate it at that point, but it would depend on how the income tax is reinstated. If there's still a term limit, I would still recommend the same amount, because if there's an ending date and a lower property tax amount, you're going to need that money in that year. If it was into perpetuity, then I would recommend that you would reduce that fund balance percentage to something more similar to the general fund.
Questions, comments?
Yes. So I think our intention is we'll have the city attorney review all of this before next week, but the intent would be to bring it back for consideration.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Next up, item 7.2, discussion of updates to Economic Development Strategic Plan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, basically, is just some background for you. In 2018, leading up to 2019, staff did quite a bit of work to create a new economic development strategy. We had not had one prior to that. And the intent has been to update it annually. We had an update prepared in March of 2020 to bring to the council. And not only did coronavirus kind of upset that schedule, but it also really changed, I think, some of the economic development strategy. So tonight, I've asked Mr. Cummins to give you kind of an overview of the main thrust of the changes to that policy, and just focus on those focus areas, essentially. And then we would ultimately incorporate this into the document itself, which there's a link in your packet too, and kind of update some of the background information and that sort of thing. But just for the benefit of time and focusing the council on the policy, we're just here tonight to talk about the high-level changes to the actual focus areas and the action plan. So with that, I'll hand it over to Adam.
Thank you, Mr. Fehrenbach. Good evening, Council. So, as Tom alluded to, we're in the process of updating the Economic Development Strategic Plan. If you take a look, if you don't mind, go to the next slide. This is our mission statement, right? To provide policies, programs, projects, and actions that enhance the economic, environmental, and social well-being of the community, and foster a healthy and vibrant downtown district, a diverse and inclusive business community, and sustainable growth. And that graph there that you see, that's on there to just emphasize that, although this is economic development, right, we're constantly trying to balance the three pillars of sustainability, the economic pillar, the environmental pillar, and the social pillar. It's a difficult thing to do, but we definitely, our team has continued to emphasize that, but now we want to get really intentional about this and make it part of our policies, our programs, our projects. So with that, next slide, please. So when developing the focus areas and the goals that are in your packet, we were guided by the City Council strategic priorities. There's more listed in your packet, but on the screen here is just two examples. And we really focused on, instituting that place-based economic development strategy, as well as incorporating inclusive and accessible recreation, cultural, and other economic development opportunities into our existing policies and programming. And so the thought is, we've already determined the strategic priorities align with the master plan, right? And so the economic development plan will align directly with those priorities, which automatically align with that master plan. Next slide, please. So we have 5 focus areas that we're really focused on. Inclusive economic development strategies, placemaking, a vibrant, authentic city and downtown, expanding and diversifying the tax base, and branding and marketing. And all these things are not mutually exclusive. They're all interrelated. Just like that previous graph, that model, we're trying to balance them in each project and each decision that we make. Next slide, please. So what do we mean by inclusive economic development? It's really removing the barriers and increasing the opportunities for low-income people and communities of color, and ultimately resulting in a more competitive, stronger city. And so a recent example of that would be the food truck ordinance, where we reduce the barriers to entry, right? And so we want to continue to be intentional about that and focus on that. Next slide, please. Thank you. And then placemaking. So process of creating quality places that people want to live, work, play, and learn in. And so the thought is that higher quality of place that we can provide and that meets the community needs, that represents our community, the more attractive and desirable our community will be, and help attract and retain the talent, which is a really big goal of ours in our division. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, focus area 3, the vibrant, authentic city in downtown. Think of our downtown as like our heart. It's a soul, it's the core of our community. We need a strong downtown for a strong community. We want to continue to create the programming, the placemaking initiatives to activate, public spaces, turn them into public places where the community wants to gather, and increase economic opportunities for our small businesses. Next slide, please. So focus area 4, expand, diversify tax base. One thing, well, many things we've learned, but one of the things we learned during COVID-19 was it was kind of a wake-up call when MSU canceled in-person classes, and our businesses were so dependent on the student population, right? And so what we've been doing ever since then is trying to diversify the local economy, and so we're going to continue to do so. And we hope that this gives us, long-term stability and resistance to should there be another pandemic. Next slide, please. Focus area 5, branding and marketing. So the graph you see there, that is 1 year since we've kind of instituted a new marketing and branding strategy. So in 1 year, our Facebook reach increased over 300%, and Instagram over 2,000%. And that's very important because we have a story to tell, and I feel like some of the strategies we've instituted are working. And we really want to highlight what we have to offer, our community assets, and we got to continue to build that brand and that marketing. And that will help us attract and retain the talent that we desire to attract and retain. And then the last slide, just some resources, some reading. So I know that's a very, very high level overview. In your packet, it does break down, it has our mission statement, the focus areas, some of the strategic priorities that we help guide us when developing the focus areas, and then the goals listed under each focus area. So with that, we can take any questions.
I'll start, and I think we're pretty much at this point really wanting you to have some lead time. I just going through the process with you this time, and the stuff through the DDA, it's just, slow, which made it expensive, which, we're trying to be fiscally responsible. A lot of that it just did so much fiscal damage with the stuff you were trying to do just because the process is so slow. So kind of having that 3-year runway or something like along those lines, you had a lot of ideas, and the uptake was just too slow to execute, not on your side, but so that you can do some things because the ideas are flowing, and I can see now the engagement from business based on the projects that are coming in and people expanding their frontage and a lot of that kind of stuff. So it's taking hold now that they're anticipating that we're going to continue doing that. But I think for business to know that we're going to continue with this process, they need to see a kind of a time horizon. And I think you need a longer time horizon to go year to year and then kind of upgrade the talent and whatever you need year over year, and attractions and whatever you want to call it over the years. That was just not enough, and I saw the cost, and by the end you're just horse trading at the end of the process. So that's not good government. So we're going to do something about that timeline moving forward. So as a comment, I guess.
Great.
What's an authentic city?
Representing the community's authentic self, the character, that charm of that specific community.
A good example is a community that doesn't just rely on chains and prepackaged businesses that you could get everywhere, and an experience you can get everywhere, but an experience you can only get here. So think of a shopping mall as being potentially the opposite. But
Okay, well, if somebody could send me some data on that. Apparently it's become a term of art, but I'd like to see where that came from, because segueing back to something that the mayor said earlier, you know, I don't know what that word means. And so, but I think this is a unique city. And it's unique because of multiculturalism, because of the things we saw tonight, because of the things we see up here. And so I just think there's a better way to capture the spirit of East Lansing than to use that word. And maybe that word means something that I don't understand, but I kind of got a feeling there's 100 other cities in the country that are using that same word right now, and I don't think that distinguishes us. So just from a
I think it's become a term that, like in placemaking, where people talk about their city having a unique face to put forward, a unique experience, and you're saying that it's authentic to your city. So when you have a downtown, people talk about it being an authentic experience because it developed as a real downtown. It wasn't a downtown that in 2000 they decided to do zero streetscape and just plop a downtown. It's a downtown that developed organically over 100 years. And that's kind of what they say. It is a term that's it's used all over in placemaking, probably is overused, but it's kind of a term that people in that area use.
I just think we ought to look at that word, because
It's
you know, you said a better word right now. Unique.
Unique.
Okay? We're unique in this state, and we're unique in this country.
Yep.
Unique school system, unique elementary schools, unique city council, a whole lot of things that you can't find anyplace else in this state. So
appreciate it.
We can certainly change the word to unique.
I want to know where authentic came from, that's all. I don't want to delay the meeting, and I'm not ganging up on you. Just sometimes I hear these terms, it's like, where did that come from?
Yeah, that's why we're here, to have this discussion and get your input, so absolutely.
I like when the lawyers become marketers.
That is scary. That is scary.
I like that.
That's unique.
Person Watson?
For Focus Area 1, Adam, are there 3 other people on your team, or is there more people?
No, we're growing so fast, so give me 1 minute. We're growing so fast, so let me think about that. We have, we're up to 5 right now, 2 part-time, yeah.
Okay, all right. What's your relationship like with the DEI department?
Still getting to establish that relationship with the DEI department, sorry.
And like Focus Area 1, is that something that you all meet with the DEI department about, or just kind of?
Great question. So these are just the draft updates, right? And I say that because we have a lot of work to do. Mm-hmm. And to implement this plan is going to require a lot of collaboration, DEI department, DPW, parking, community events, just a breadth of collaboration in different groups to make this work.
Thanks. And your reach, your Facebook reach, that's pretty awesome. Who do you credit that to?
I would credit that to Ella Sines, our creative advertising specialist.
Yeah. I haven't talked about it in a long time, and I'm not, but I used to try to connect council to the City of East Lansing's, Facebook stuff. We could probably help in that too, but anyway, I know that there was some differentiation that we wanted to do with the city and council. So, but good job. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
No, I think to that, as well as focus area one, I just think you always want new money when you were talking about, or different money, and I think that might be in that equity piece and that diversity piece. Obviously, that's, if college kid money only stretches so far, I think that's where East Lansing's at. We need different, I mean, the $2 beers, it's hard to tax that. So just kind of that, being inviting to the new, wherever that new economy is going to come from, and however we do that, and if that's from your perspective, from D&I, wherever we can plug in and partner to attract, and just, sometimes it's just making people aware,
Right.
that we have a welcoming business environment for kind of all, for different things, and especially post-pandemic, I think people came out with a lot of ideas and are just looking for places to land.
Right.
I know that's at least what I'm hearing now. There's an urgency or eagerness to maybe go a little bit brick and mortar again. So there might be opportunities for some different types of things in the downtown or the area. So that could be something we explore.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I will say I've noticed that the empty storefronts aren't staying empty as long as they used to. So I think we're still having a little bit more turnover of business than I would love. I'd love to see some more people putting deeper roots down in our downtown, but the empty storefronts aren't staying empty, and that's a great sign that we're headed in the right direction. So props to everyone that's been working so hard on just watering the plants, I guess.
Yeah, and I think Adam captures this very well. I think I know this material well because I sit in a lot of spaces with you on your stuff, and I think it's just hard to quantify what you're trying to get to. I think it's cool. You just know it when you see it. Like, you know when it's fake or someone's being cool, and you know when something's cool. And I think that's our goal, is to be, a place where people just want to come see what's going on. And
Yeah, a highly desirable place, and I think we're capturing those strategies and these goals, to continue to do that and strengthen our goals and objectives and our programs to meet those goals.
And maybe we should use the word cool instead of authentic.
Cool. That's been used by the
Call
state.
yourself
No,
cool,
yeah.
you're automatically uncool.
Yeah.
It cannot be a self-confirmed accolade. You
No,
need
you're
to come
cool.
from
But can we
outside.
aspire to be cool?
Yeah.
It's inside.
Aspirational coolness.
You're born with it. What? There was one other part of this, Adam, and I can't remember what it was at this time. How do we better access kind of your vision for things and that kind of thing as a council? How do we support this stuff better? Because I know how in bureaucracies this stuff can die on the vine. I just want us to be able to help these things along as you're in their infancy and that kind of thing. How can we help as council?
Go ahead.
So, from my perspective, this is how you help us, because we have, and Adam deserves a lot of credit and his team for putting this together, because really what it represents is his vision for economic development through the lens of the council's strategic priorities. And each one of these goals is going to then flow to a work plan that's going to align to these goals, which aligns to the council's strategic priorities. So really, it's less his vision and more the city's vision under the auspices of the council. And so for you to read these documents and agree that there's alignment with your goals is really what we're looking for, so that ultimately that's how we derive our empowerment to then put a work plan together and activate these and really bring them into operation.
Well, I think we need you to keep us current, particularly, Adam, when you're going to the placemaking, because I know this changes on a dime. That's the difficulty with, as you're iterating or figuring out stuff when you're going and seeing the latest, greatest. Not necessarily that's what we're going to adapt to, but making sure we're current and, not on last year's plan, because I know it can change fast. So.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And it's very fluid. Placemaking's constantly evolving.
Yeah.
And just to add, I mean, that's why our intent is to do an annual update, and has been since the beginning. Of course, we missed the first mark because of COVID, but it's kind of amazing how quickly a year will come around in terms of one of these plans. So we're going to keep it on our radar and keep tweaking it and keep looking for opportunities.
More questions or comments? clear? All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Item 7.3, discussion of Northern Tier housing. I think that's Tom.
I'll start. Should we put up our presentation? Okay, Nicole, do you mind putting up our presentation, please? There, Zoe. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight. So we're pleased to be back in front of you with an update on efforts to address the goals in the city's near-term housing action plan. That plan's a direct result of the target market analysis that was released last fall and represents really a roadmap towards addressing housing inequity and diversification of the city's housing stock. And I know that's a tall order and recognize that. So our presentation tonight really is a follow-up to that conversation that started back in February with the topic of the marketing of the city's 27-acre property at Coleman and West Roads was discussed. So the message from council at that meeting, at least what I walked away with, was staff needed to think big in leveraging the site to address the goals of the city, specifically those related to housing. So a primary takeaway was council seeking input from the Planning Commission on whether or not housing would be appropriate as a component of the future vision of the city's parcel at Coleman and West, but also generally whether or not housing should be considered in the northern tier area of the city. So since that meeting, staff's been working with the Planning Commission on answering really two fundamental questions, namely whether or not the future land use map should be amended in a future update to the 2018 master plan to designate parcels in the northern tier area of the city for residential land uses, and also if residential land uses in some form should be a component of the future vision for that 27-acre city-owned parcel. So on both questions, as you can see noted in the letter from Chairperson Dan Bowman, Planning Commission is generally supportive of a master plan review to consider housing in the northern tier, but also the inclusion of residential in the future vision of the Coleman West property. So this is all, of course, at this point without regard as to the type, number of units, specific locations, and many other really devil in the details, all of which will be discussed at length as these initiatives roll out. So the review of the 2018 master plan, which is required every 5 years, I'll start that again. So the review of the 2018 master plan, the review is required every year. It's certainly not obligated to make any changes to the plan. And to consider an amendment to the future land use map to designate land for residential development. Right now, really, the future land use map does not envision residential. There are some areas in northern tier that include residential development, but for the most part, certainly the large undeveloped parcels right now are slated for office commercial development, kind of that corporate headquarter. Think of the MSU FCU development. That was the vision at the time. So, however, the last master planning process took approximately 6 years. So at this point, we're suggesting a much more narrow in scope review of the document. So as I said, there's no obligation to rewrite the document. It was approved in 2018, and for a couple of years during the pandemic, really kind of time stood still. So most of the document's still very relevant and aligned with the policy goals of the city. Minor cleanups are planned and anticipated. The majority of the work would be on the future land use map. So if we can limit the scope of the master plan review, staff could do the work in-house without hiring a consultant, which I understand was part of the process in the past. So the second part of this presentation really speaks to the other part of this initiative, which is the future of the city-owned property at Coleman and West, and I'll hand it over to Mr. Fehrenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Menzer. I think there was interest by the Planning Commission and the Housing Commission to really look at marketing the Coleman and West property that the city owns, about 27 acres, with the goals of the housing action plan in place. So what we would like to do to operationalize kind of that effort moving forward is really to try to strike a balance between the economic stability, kind of the economic realities of redevelopment, and addressing as many of the goals of the near-term housing action plan as possible. So one of the aspects is for us to, activate our team to review ultimately the tools that are available to us, what some of the best practices are, what some other communities have done, especially as it relates to creative approaches to using city property to really incentivize the type of missing middle housing, attainable housing in the kind of design and form that makes the most sense for our community and for the city council ultimately. What we would like to do in order to get there and determine what is the right balance and what does the community really desire and how to balance that with the economic realities would be to engage a consultant who specializes in this area to really review the property and create a model for us that brings into bear the market potential of the site, but also helps us understand what some of the kind of the ways we can balance the types of units, the number of units, the density on the site, and the price points, as well as kind of what percentage of low to moderate income qualified or attainable qualified housing we should kind of include in this plan to find that balance in the way that makes the most sense for the city. So ultimately, that effort and that model would lead us then to a couple things. One would be to do some focus groups with the community so that we can kind of raise awareness, help educate folks on what we're trying to do, and kind of gauge the feedback from the community in terms of, form, density, unit mix, et cetera, and how folks react to that and what the desires are there. Ultimately leading to us putting out then a very informed RFQ, a request for qualifications, to identify who are the developer partners that would want to work with us, what kind of experiences do they have, and what kind of projects could they bring to bear that, again, would help us to balance these two forces. And then from there, we'd be talking about potential rezoning, either conditional to a project or through the lens of everything that we've learned through this effort, as well as hopefully working through, with a developer to a development agreement, assuring that the city has the controls in place from a zoning standpoint, as well as from an ownership and site control standpoint, to ensure that what the vision of the community is best realized. So ultimately, we're here tonight to make sure we're on the same page with council's expectations and have these two questions to ask you, which is, should we move forward with this master plan update? And should we move forward with engaging a consultant to develop a market-informed model for a future RFP or RFQ? So that's the end of our comments, but we're happy to take any questions that you have or hope for some feedback.
I have a couple of questions. Our agreement with Bath, explain to me how that works, and there's an expiration date or there's not an expiration date. It's like, is it 4/29?
So it's 425. There's a number of different overlapping places. There's not just one.
Right.
There's multiple, and they're 30 years with extensions, and then the property comes either to us or to them. So we'd have to. It's not just one thing we can summarize, but we can get a sort of general picture. This parcel is actually wholly in the city of East Lansing. It's not a part of 425.
No, I was thinking more on the future land use side of it, just because there's the most of the swath to our north is in that kind of nebulous category of, is it ours or is it theirs? Will it stay ours or will it stay theirs? And I'm not imagining that either Bath or Leslie would leap up suddenly and want to take over the infrastructure for a heavily built municipal area, but it's just, it's not really ours, so that colors my feelings about it. In terms of, I think updating the master plan is a no-brainer for me, just because the future of office use is looking much different than it was when it was written. I think it's good to keep these documents sort of flexible as we move through different economic situations. So I think that's a definite yes for me. I know we've received some interest on that parcel from parties that want to build what they want to build on it. And I think, I still baffled why anybody would want to live that close to the highway. But if there are people that want to live that close to the highway, who am I to tell them that they can't, right? So, but I do think that we have, the power to influence what that looks like in a way that we don't usually do because we own it. I guess, what's the kind of ballpark figure of what a consultant would, I know we haven't put out the RFQ yet, but do you guys have kind of an idea in mind of what that would cost?
I think a ballpark is probably between $10,000 and $20,000.
Okay, so that's not too much on a $4 million piece of property. Okay, I'm fine with it. If we did put out an RFQ for a consultant to kind of envision that site for us, what are we expecting to pay for them? And 10 to 20,000 was the answer.
Oh, yeah, you're ready. They passed.
Aren't we waiting on another consultant still?
The housing consultant. Are you talking about the
Yes.
housing study?
Nope, the housing study was completed, as was the strategic plan, which led us to kind of a staff-based operationalization of that, known as the near-term action plan, and that's what we're working through now.
And how much did we pay that housing consultant group?
I believe it was $40,000 all together.
This isn't a question to you, it's just a comment. Sometimes it seems easy to engage with third-party consultants, but then other times it seems difficult to pull in a third-party investigator or to think about running it by this other third-party person. And that's not, again, it's not a comment to you, it's just a general thing about the work that we do and when we are asked or think about someone else coming in to gauge the situation, when that's absorbed, and then other times when it's not absorbed. I'm on board with Mayor Pro Tem about the master plan changes. The other things that you've mentioned feel like they might take a long time. And so do you have ideas on what time frame we might be looking at? Especially just because I guess it seemed like our housing consultant, it seemed like that was a while that took. And when we talk about bringing in group conversations too, it feels like things might not come to fruition for a number of years.
Sure. I would expect it to be a much faster effort than the overall housing planning, housing study, because it's really focused on this one area, and we already have a breadth of knowledge to work from. And really what we're looking for is kind of based on the TMA, the market analysis, and what it's identified as sort of the gaps in our housing attainability, and sort of who are the people that want to come into East Lansing but can't for various reasons. Using that to kind of inform a model of how to create a mix of different unit types, different unit designs, different density, and different price points, to kind of try to find that sweet spot between the economic sustainability of a project, as well as kind of hitting as many of the gaps that the housing study identified. It certainly does add time to have focus groups involved of community stakeholders, but I think that ultimately that in the broader scope of like bringing a project to fruition will save us time, because we'll be able to flesh out what, if any, some of the issues might be in the community, and incorporate those into our thoughts, into zoning, into really the RFQ itself. I would expect that this effort would take somewhere between 3 to 6 months. to get us to that point of, being ready to put the RFQ out. And, there's different ways to kind of look at this, different ways to, maybe put it in motion. We like this because, again, it helps inform the city and the council in terms of what is a good project that hits as much of our goals as possible, with being steeped in the market realities, so that when we're at the point of putting out the RFQ, we kind of have a much better understanding of what those realities are, and have a much better, I think, chance of connecting with developers that will want to give us what we want, because we can make the economics work for them. So that's why we like this approach, but it's certainly not the only way we can approach this, and we're certainly open to council's direction.
When Councilmember Watson is done, I have a question. So Councilmember Watson reminded me, we had that housing study. I would certainly like to see that before we do anything with Northern Tier. I was searching, and I don't believe the City Council has seen the housing study. And as I look at our city webpage, the most recent housing study that's posted on the webpage is a senior housing study from 2014. So where is the housing study, and how can we read it?
So the housing study should be available at cityofeastlansing.com/housing study. And we have reviewed it, including with the, you may recall, the several consultants coming here. We had a joint meeting of the Housing Commission and Planning Commission, and came back to the council through that lens with a discussion about the marketing of the 27 acres at Coleman and West. And you directed us to go to the Planning Commission and ask these specific questions related to the future land use map, as well as housing on that site. And so that's kind of what has led us back here tonight.
I thought during...
I was under the impression it was going to come back here for general discussion. In fact, a discussion-only meeting would be an ideal opportunity. I know members of the community who had followed this, and you're right, when I looked at this other webpage, here it is. But I'm guessing that there would be broad community interest in discussing that, particularly, before we discuss any other housing developments.
I was just going to add, from what I recall, there was like another person named Justin or something like that that was supposed to be reviewing something, and then it was going to come back to us. And I don't think that happened.
I don't remember the
So,
Justin part, but yeah.
Mr. Justin Sprague was our consultant on the planning side, who helped us put together the housing strategic plan. And that is a very high level and broad document. In the short term, staff has operationalized that in the near-term housing action plan, which we did discuss with council as well as the Planning Commission and Housing Commission. And that's really where we're focused in the short term. In the long term, revisiting the housing strategic plan and some of the kind of longer term strategies that are enumerated there is certainly on our radar. But for the moment, we are certainly focused, based on council's direction, on the near-term housing action plan, which is in itself has many moving parts, 7 priority areas that right now we are focused on 2 of which, and are building our work plan to be able to approach several of the others over the course of the next year or 2. But it's certainly a big conversation to look at the broad housing study itself, and to look at the broad housing strategic plan. And we're happy to come back and talk about the broader context as well at the council's desire. But at the moment, based on your direction, we're really focused on the near-term action plans in those seven strategy areas.
Yeah, I'll start kind of from the last presentation. I think the question is creating something with some authenticity. Really, to have any ability to maneuver this East Lansing thing, it has to be a neighborhood that's built out, because it's clearly there's political ramifications to not being a neighborhood and placing this place out here on an island and having it not have ownership, single-family homes, and the clout that comes with that. I have really no interest in not finding a way forward for some single-family homes that kind of will lock my equity in perpetuity. That's really nice for me if I go that route and it's all density and this, that, and the other, and then, we're completely landlocked forever. I think there's a need to, what we're looking for, I think we need to know it's a neighborhood. It's something that's just not some weird amalgamation that has some character to it. That's a lot of stuff. And then also, because we're considering affordability and that stuff, we still have ability to look at other land uses in downtown and this, that, and the other as a more complete plan. Not that because that's just why the northern tier looks like it looks now. It's just an amalgamation of good and bad ideas across many councils and whatever. I don't even know. I have no idea what that thought process was across that. It's weird as it's completed now, and it's the last thing I want to see for really what's the last large piece of East Lansing is another weird amalgamation of whatever what it comes to. So I want it to be a neighborhood that has its own character, its own set of, that has neighborhood presidents and has things and has all the same stuff, and it's not just an island of people trapped out with no representation out in the middle of the northern tier, which it's not going to give us what we need out of it. So that's the uniqueness of East Lansing.
So you want this 27 acres to be a neighborhood with single-family homes? Is that what you're saying?
It needs to be more than apartments. It needs to be more than.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to figure out what you're saying.
Yeah, I can say, because we're going to send it out to consultant. The consultant is fresh out of whatever class, like we do when we go, and he's got the idea. He's going to come back with density and quadplexes and all this stuff, and then who's going to live there, and how are they?
Yeah.
They are, but how are they represented? That's it. You got to be represented to.
Yeah, I'm not arguing with you.
I'm
I
not
was
arguing with
just trying to figure out what you were saying. That's all.
No, I'm emoting.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get a feel for. No, because I get frustrated with the consulting part because I know what's going to come back.
That's where I'm going too.
Yeah, I know.
But let me ask you a question. This is not the East Lansing Public Schools, correct?
I believe it's Lansing Public Schools.
Lansing schools. We
Yeah.
can
So
bring back sorry. I thought that
if
was
we
your
were to
question.
if we were to create a neighborhood here, it would not be an East Lansing Public Schools neighborhood.
Correct.
No,
Correct?
but I think one of the populations that we've failed to serve are young couples that are just starting out on a career path who probably don't have children yet. So I think having a kind of starter neighborhood that has aspects of permanent living that are not necessarily connected to the school district is not the worst idea.
Well, yeah, fine.
Maybe we can bring back the near-term action plan and bring back and just revisit that conversation to sort of refresh, because I think that the point of this conversation also was that there's this missing middle of housing, that needs that aren't being met right now, and that was kind of the big find of the plan, was that there's single-family housing, there's apartments for students, but there's not housing for professionals, young professionals, people moving into the community for a short period of time, for a year, to work at the Frib. There's not that type of housing. And I think that was the big thing of the near term, and I think that that's where this housing is looking for, and that's why these developers want to place this housing. And I think that there's a really good opportunity to link what people really want and what the housing study shows, and come up with this housing missing middle, so to speak. And I think that it does fit in that location, because we've had a number of developers say that product there, and I've expressed the same thing about, well, it's next to a highway, but they say that helps with marketing, and it helps with location, it helps with people getting on the highway to travel. So I think that this is actually hitting on a lot of cylinders for what we actually need, but maybe we should bring back the housing near-term study and have that conversation just to refresh everyone's recollection of where we were, and then we can maybe go to the next step of this again, beyond that, after that step.
Mayor, I apologize. I interrupted you, but I was trying to have a discussion because I was trying to figure out where we wanted to go here. So go ahead. I'm sorry. I interrupted you.
No, I mean, and we're doing the city thing, and it's kind of weird for me. I think we know what the need is, but I think it's going to come back around, and I think we have to be kind of directive on what we want and the vision we have for this project. I just don't, I'm confused. Go.
I guess this is to Mr. Mintz or Mr. Fehrenbach. What is the approximate staff cost of preparing an RFQ to just put one out there and see what sort of responses we get back?
I mean, we can build that into our work plan, certainly. Well, I guess, just from my perspective, we're going to be looking at the future land use map and looking at updating it for some kind of housing, some place in the northern tier with some kind of density that the community can live with. At the same time, if we look at this 27 acres where the city has site control, we have the ability to really kind of test the market. And so what we were talking about specifically is using the target market analysis that was developed and identified some of the gaps that we have, some of the people that would invest here if given the right types of units, if given the right types of price points, if given the right types of density and amenities and those types of things. And so what we wanted to do was to work with someone from a market perspective who can speak that language to the development community and work with us specifically to find really what is the right balance of those mixes, including attainability, including low to moderate income at some percentage. What is a good mix and a model for the city that would also that would also hit the goals of a developer and attract a developer or hopefully multiple developers to compete with each other to bring us what we want. And then concurrently, we would be addressing the zoning issues for this particular site that then could serve as a model for the rest of the future of that area. So we could certainly put out an RFQ now and ask developers to respond to it. I think what we would end up with is more what they want from a profitability perspective than really addressing as much of our goals as we can put in our narrative for the RFP and sort of more directly and more intentionally request.
I think that's kind of the fascinating idea in my mind in this is kind of our regular process, but inside out. Usually a developer comes to us and we say, can we encourage you to please, include green space in this? Can we, it's in our code, you have to do this because we told you to. And this is our opportunity to be like, this is exactly what we want. What can you do with it? I guess kind of the point of my question was really, I don't see that we lose anything in preparing and putting out an RFQ. It doesn't obligate us to hire the consultant, and it will give us kind of an idea of who's out there that's got the expertise to kind of tackle this problem.
Now, you talked about one step earlier, an RFQ for a developer or an RFQ for a consultant to tell us what we would want to see?
To do for the consultant. I don't see that we lose anything in preparing it and putting it out there, other than our staff's time to prepare it.
I mean, the reality also is people talk about studies being, you have a study and then it goes on a shelf and doesn't get used. What we're saying here is we want to take this housing study and find out what the housing study informed us on and then plop that into this RFP so that we make a developer aware of what we actually think we need based on our housing study. So it's not just them telling us what we need, it's what our housing study is saying is missing from East Lansing's housing stock. So I think it's a good approach from that perspective.
Can I answer your two questions? My answer to your first question is yes. My answer to your second question is no.
Which two questions?
For the two questions you ask us. So, and let me just explain my answer to the second one, which I don't think we need to hire a consultant to tell us. I think what I'm hearing is there's kind of a consensus at this table as to what we would like to have out there. And so, and secondly, I think we have the expertise within this community from volunteers that are in the real estate side of things and development and things like that, who I think would be happy to help us construct some sort of a document like that or assist in you guys doing that. And number three, George, with all due respect to you, everything I hear from anybody I've talked to is exactly the opposite of what you just said in terms of that this is a wonderful site for single-family housing. I've not heard that from anybody because everything I've heard is to the opposite in terms of the cost ramifications and everything else. That doesn't mean I agree with that. I agree with the mayor. I'd love to see a neighborhood out there of single-family homes, whether the people have kids, don't have kids, but that they want to live in East Lansing for this reason or the other reason. But I don't understand why we need to go hire a consultant for $10,000 or $15,000 or $8,000 every time we turn around to do something. I know you guys are doing it because that's your job. I get that, but it's like I think there's 3 or 4 or 5 votes right here at the table for having single-family homes up there.
Yeah, so
I think.
I may have misspoke. I do not think, I was never proposing it should be single-family homes up there. I think we were looking at, I was not proposing single-family homes in that location. I'm saying that there was an apartment-type mix of different housing units, townhomes, some detached and attached, and apartments geared towards the missing middle of professionals, empty nesters, a different stock than the purely student-focused. And that's what developers have come to us looking to do, and that's what the housing study says we are somewhat missing. So I was not proposing that that's a single-family location. I do think that East Lansing could benefit from more single-family locations, but that was not the location that I think it should be, and that's not what any of the developers that want to move forward with it were recommending for that location.
Yeah,
anyway.
and so at a certain level, I guess my attitude about this is, I think the market is the consultant. So I think we can construct the vision we have. Staff can implement that with regard to a RFQ for an actual development, and then the market will tell us if there's something there or not. All I have to do is listen to Ms. Watson, who wanted to live in East Lansing and wanted to get her kids into the East Lansing schools and fought to get a house here, and I listened to the mayor, who's concerned about neighborhoods, and I mean, it just seems to me, with all due respect to you, George, this is a site where, in a wonderful world, we could put single-family housing. Now, maybe I'm misreading my fellow council members there, but
I just view consultants different. And I don't know, private sector consultant comes when you're stuck. I haven't seen us get to a sticking point. We haven't got to any point. It's weird to consult on the front end to me. I mean, I'd consult realtors. I'd bring the realtors in, I'd bring builders in, I'd bring the people who would actually do the projects in and say, well, here's the crazy things council's saying they want us to do. Can you sell this? And then they'll tell you yes or no. I can't sell up there. We can't mix use, or all the people. And if we need affordability, then people who do affordability need to be in the room, and this, that, and that. I'm confused to why I would go to a consult. The process makes no sense to me. I'm just gonna lay it out there to you like that. Like, the market will bear what it bears, and the realtors, builders, people who do affordable housing or mixed use or whatever else will tell you this can be done. You can get this many single families in here to support that. I need this many 4x. I need this many duplexes, this, that, and the other, and they'll tell you what the market is. I'm confused. The consultant would mean I'm stuck. That's how I use consultants in industry. I don't call a consultant while I'm still lucid.
To me, the purpose, I'll follow Mr. Brookover's lead, and I'll answer both of your questions with a yes. I see the value of hiring a consultant, not because we don't know what we want there, but because the part that we're missing, the information that we're missing, is the part that comes between the market of the finished product and the marketing to the developer. All of the ratios and income things that a developer looks at when they look at a property and think, how can I maximize my profits on this? That's the hump that we have to get over. So we know what we want, and we want a developer to be able to build it, and this consultant can tell us how to fit it into the income ratios that developer is going to want, which is an expertise that I don't think that we have. We might have it. We might have a volunteer in the community that's willing to give us that information. And my experience, people do not part with that kind of information very easily. So anyway, that's why I'm a yes.
A good example of why we need a consultant is if we put this out there, both people who came to us looking to buy this property did not talk about income qualified. They had a mix of housing, but not income qualified. And I think we want to tell them, yes, you can come give a mix of housing, but we want a certain percentage of income qualified, and that's going to be a requirement of us because it's our property. And then they can tell us, I don't know if I can do it, but we already have our consultant who says this is the right mix for us. So I think it arms us with more information to get what council wants from that property as well, and what the housing study also says. So I do think it helps arm us with information to start the process.
Yep, I get that. I'm pretty sure we used consultants in the convexity project and whatever else to build up to that. We didn't end up with affordable housing in that thing. And I'm saying the right partner will build the stuff that they build. We just can't have partners that don't actually do. Everyone's going to come and say, the consultant's going to give us a recommendation. If we pick the wrong, it's the partner. Do they actually do, where have you done this? That kind of thing. And rather than, I think that's where the hitch is in our giddy up here a little bit. Just someone who's done this process. What other cities have you done kind of here's our vision. Where have you done this at? That kind of thing. And do you want a partner or ever do it again? Or do you come?
That's what you find when you put out an RFQ. The RFQ is not a finished portfolio of what we want. The RFQ is just a pamphlet from the person that says, this is my expertise, do you want to buy it? So I don't see any problem with putting out an RFQ to find out who's out there that's willing to work with us, because there's no skin off of our teeth and we don't have to hire them.
I don't either. I don't want I think I've seen a little bit of this. Cities are excitable, and I want us to get exactly what we want out of this process, because you very rarely hold any cards as a city. I don't want us being talked into the excitement of someone who's fresh out of college with what they think East Lansing density should look. That's the whole thing. I just won't. And it'll come from planning. It'll be all juiced up. I just want us to actually be sober and that through the process. That's all I'm getting at.
I guess just from my perspective, that is not the type of consultant we'd be engaging. We'd be engaging someone who has a market expertise and would steep themselves in the knowledge of our TMA and housing strategic plan, and and help us balance the market's desire for the site and a profit motive with, I think, the city's larger vision from a community development perspective to address as much of the strategic priorities in the housing near-term action plan, including hitting those market segments that we're missing right now, as well as the pretty significant and intentional equity and attainability goals that we have, in a way that we can then bring to the market and say, this is informed, we know you can do this, we want to find the partner that can give us what we want, that does balance these forces, and that's who we're going to work with. So that was really the intention. But again, there's other ways we can shape this that could lead to a similar outcome. That was just staff's thinking and our hope that we could move forward and proceed from here.
This property is listed for sale right now, right?
That is correct.
With the broker whose listing now is going to be up here in July 1st?
That's correct.
Okay. So it's been for sale. We have no offers, correct?
We got offers. The whole thing here was we got 2 housing offers, and this was zoned for commercial, for office.
Did we ever hear about those housing offers?
Yeah, we sent those. I mean, it might have been the prior council at this point. I mean, these offers were a while back.
Oh, but nothing in the last 6 or 8 months.
No, but we did come here to council to discuss the marketing of these properties. As you might recall, we had some renderings created based on what the current zoning and the current future land use map, and that is what led us to council directing us to go to the Planning Commission and the Housing Commission with these questions as to that we've answered for you in the letter that's in your packet tonight.
And basically, should we pivot back to housing instead of just purely office, commercial, retail, whatever it may be?
But the inhibition on the sale is the land use map, right? The land use map was an inhibition on the sale of the two
Correct.
offers that came in before I got to the council. So now you're suggesting you go back and take a look at the land use map, I assume, to potentially modify it for this site, correct?
For the larger area in the northern tier.
Okay, including this site.
Correct.
Okay, and at that point in time, if you do that, then we can decide who we're going to have list the property for us as of July 1st, and then we can see if anybody's interested in this site for housing, which they already were a year ago, correct?
Nothing stops us from putting out an RFP right now for housing, and once we get the land use map. The problem is, I think we're going to miss some of the things that council may want. In particular, income qualified housing may not well be a part of what we're going to get. And if we take this first step, we can make sure we get that extra component in there that council has been looking for, and tell people, this is what we expect to see in this proposal from you. It just gives us a better first shot to tell the developers what our expectations are, so they don't come in and just say, I want all market rate, I'm not interested in income qualified housing. And then we have to, we're not going to get it because we've had two developers make nice offers, but the plan does not include income qualified housing. And we want them to have that housing mix they already talked about with income qualified housing.
Well, I don't know. I wasn't part of a discussion where we decided that.
That's been a part, income qualified housing has been a part of strategic priorities. It's been a part of, it's been a part of many policy level discussions from council, is that we want to try to make East Lansing more affordable.
I'm not disputing that. And the overall housing study was, with Mr. Venser presenting it to the Seniors Commission, was talking about, trying to put more housing downtown and things like that. And we have a piece of property right now that, based on what I know, it's going to require 250 units to get qualified in terms of the state funding for low-income housing and stuff like that, now that we've freed up the one site. So, there's a lot of different pieces of the jigsaw puzzle here. So I didn't know that. I certainly haven't indicated that I'm insistent on having low-income housing, or whatever you want to call it, on this particular 27 acres. So I don't know what the mayor's saying, but to me, we're having a fun discussion here, but we're sort of on a stalemate, and it seems to me, two of us are saying one thing, one of us is saying another thing, and the other two haven't said anything. And so, here's the practical reaction of this. Here's what now is happening. I think the consensus is the answer to your first question is yes, because three of us have said yes, the other two haven't said anything. The second question is a no, or it's not answered. And if you put out an RFQ for a consultant, that's going to extend the process for another couple of months to do that, then to have that person do their thing. And so we either extend the process for a while or we don't. You spend $10,000 or you don't. So I don't know what else to do, Mayor.
This is a clarification. I guess through planning, when you're talking affordability and this, that, there's experts. It's not necessarily, I'm just like, we have a region, and we have regional experts. We know what the housing stock needs. We know what it will bear. All this seems housed here. I understand what you're it's just you need housing tomorrow. If LEAP says you need housing tomorrow. The Chamber says they need housing tomorrow. Manufacturing Association says you need. I'm confused what we're consulting about. We're just talking now what needs to go where.
Well, we can save the step if that's council's direction and start more early with an RFP and open it up for development options, right? And see what developers come with. We can do that step and stop this middle step of a consultant.
Maybe I'm confused just on the process.
Lay it out for us.
Yeah,
Mr. Fehrenbach.
That is certainly one approach. I think what we were trying to get help with from a market perspective is to find the right balance of different mixes of units so that we can balance the economic sustainability of this project, create essentially tax revenues that will pay for city services, while also maximizing our ability to hit the attainability goals and as well as the affordability goals. So finding what that right mix is that is sustainable for the city and is something that the market will bear from a community development standpoint.
I'll clarify then that we don't. have that capability anywhere, and we're flying blind until we have that, or we have a sense through planning, through the staff. I mean, that's what I'm getting. I'm not.
We do not have that expertise in-house.
Got it.
That is a very specialized expertise that is not present on our staff, and so we wouldn't be flying blind, but we would lack the true current market the informed market perspective. But it's not to say that we can't still balance those forces. However, having an expert at our side who can help us to craft what should be a good balance and put that through the lens of our community's desires for these things, I think would be very helpful.
Okay, so you still have to do the land use map thing, right?
I'm sorry?
You still have to do the land use map thing, right? That comes first.
Not necessarily.
Concurrent.
I think it can be concurrent. I think that we can work through the future land use map discussion while also using this property as a test case.
Okay, I've been pounded into submission because really, the delightful conversation, but I'm done now. And so my vote is now changed on the second one. It's yes, but with this contingency, I don't want that RFQ to be awarded without it coming back to the council for a decision as to whether they're going to be hired or not. So I'm giving up.
Is that a consensus?
Regardless of the price. Yeah.
We got it. We have clear direction, then is that a concurrent?
No, I don't think that's a clear direction. That's just Brookover talking.
I'm trying to see if that's everybody's, if that's good, we can take that direction and bring something back.
My face says what I think. I think we need housing. I think there's forces at our fingertips around us that are experts in both affordability and everything else. I'm confused. It's about what I feel about what came back from the housing study. You could have gave me $40 and I could have done that. I'm not trying to be funny.
Yeah, seriously.
That
was not.
That's what's going to come back. So this is a little frustrating. Everyone knew that conclusion before, like it was a prequel to what we knew we needed as East Lansing.
I think it's what we knew anecdotally. Anecdotally, people knew that there's not rental housing for grown-ups. Anecdotally, we knew that, and I think that there was there's more broad information in the housing study than just that, but I do get your point that people knew anecdotally that there's pieces missing from our component.
So I guess from the zoning, get this thing turned around so every square inch of East Lansing's ready for housing. I guess that part is a yesterday kind of thing. The thing has crisis behind it. Like, I don't think it's this speed of government thing is kind of a little weird. We have to move as if people are trying to move here and they're building stuff when there's nowhere people to live. So it's probably my government fatigue today.
May I offer a general suggestion? Every other zoning board, every other community I've been in, and when you're a reporter in small towns, you go to a lot of planning commission, zoning boards, city councils, so a whole bunch of them. When I first came to an East Lansing city council meeting and they were discussing locating actually housing, I was on the phone the next day with David Pearson. I was like, are we Australia or is everything else? Meaning, is this the strange animal or is it all the rest of the state? So generally what happens in other communities is they set the zoning for what they want on a piece of property, on a geographic segment of town, and then the developers come in and build that thing. If it's zoned for, say, hotels or commercial industrial, then the community has spoken through its zoning. East Lansing tends to do this a little differently, which is we zone when the developer shows up and tells us what they want, which I don't think is really the...
I'm sorry, I just don't agree with you. Go ahead.
Well, no, everyone else in the world sets their zoning map and they follow that, and then developers come in and they may ask for a variance. I think we're, like Councilmember Brookover, that we may have the occasional disagreement. I agree with him. I am beaten into submission. I think this is a colossal waste of money to hire a consultant to tell us what we roughly already know. However, at this point, I don't have it in me to argue. But I do think we could spend that money elsewhere doing other things. I think the single-family housing is what we want in that area. So perhaps we turn this around and rezone that area of land for that use and see who comes to us. And then we can tell them about our income qualified. But I don't know that we need a consultant to tell us that. And I think the housing study may have poisoned the waters for future consultants because that was not great work. But there you have it.
And frankly, similar sized plots where this has already been done, that's cool. We'd like that. Like that, I don't know, maybe I'm oversimplifying.
Well, I mean, to Councilmember Babcock's point, we did have a future land use map, and we envisioned office, we envisioned big office
Now,
and
George,
commercial
we're
there.
so far past that. I'm no mean to be rude here.
Yeah.
Housing's the priority.
Yep.
What's a 27-acre plot looks like similar to somewhere else in another, it's not, this is not hard.
Oh, so all we got to do, I mean, I'm fine with that, Mayor. We'll put out an RFP for housing, and we'll see what comes, and then we'll be hearing exactly what council says, so we're good with that.
Yeah, and we rezone, yes. I mean, I appreciate bureaucracy sometimes, but this doesn't make sense.
We're good with that approach. We can go to the step of putting out an RFP, and we'll see what comes, and if it's single-family housing or a mix of housing, we'll bring it back to council.
Love it.
Let's do it. That's all I've got.